What's up, everybody? For the FTWitachi here, you know what it is. Thank you very much for tuning in. So, they interview Junichi Masuda and Jigeru Omari about Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. Game Freak's Junichi and Shigeru discuss the finer details about the latest Pokemon RPG adventure. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and see what this interview is all about. Here, Pokemon Shield and Pokemon Sword at E3. There was an interview with the two main people at Game Freak about Pokemon Shield and Pokemon Sword. The annual E3 Expo is an exciting time for video game players, and Pokemon fans have even more reason to get hyped, as it's the first time that Pokemon Sword and Shield have been available for the public to play. During E3, they had the opportunity to sit down and chat with two of the creators of these upcoming games from Game Freak Inc., Junichi, and the producer of Pokemon Sword and Shield, and Shigeru, the director of the games. Here's what they had to say. So, starting off with designing the Galar region. So Pokemon.com was able to ask one of the first things they wanted to ask about is the theme of Pokemon Sword and Shield. What do you hope players get out of the experience of the Galar region? The biggest theme in these games is the idea of being the greatest or the strongest, and they express it through the Nintendo Switch being the most powerful system that Pokemon games have been on before in terms of graphical capabilities and hardware specifications, which is why I'm super happy it's on the Nintendo Switch instead of a handheld, even though the Switch can be handheld. Also, the Dynamax feature shows how Pokemon become huge and strong. They also really want players to feel the idea of strength come through these games. Next question. Tell us about the Galar region. What was the inspiration behind this new region? Why did you feel this would be a good setting for the next big Pokemon adventure? The Galar region is based on the UK and it ties back into the theme of strength. There are a lot of legends in the UK of giants and whatnot, and they're trying to convey that in the games as well. Next question. Create an entirely new region sounds like a daunting task. How long does it take to develop a new region? What goes into planning of these worlds? It really depends on the game, but development can go on for quite some time. Specifically with Pokemon Shield and Sword, they began conceptual phase immediately after the development wrapped on Pokemon Sun and Moon. That concept phase took about a year, and then they moved on to the full production of that. All of that, along with the debug phase, took about 3 years. Next up, creating new Pokemon. First question. They see they're holding these large plush versions of Pokemon Sword and Shield's first partner Pokemon. What is the thought process behind creating new first partner Pokemon? Are they designed as first partner Pokemons from the start, or do you design multiple new Pokemon and then decide which ones will become the first partners? The way Pokemon design process works is different each game. But for Pokemon Sword and Shield process, we first had our planners and concept designers work to come up with the settings for where these three first partner Pokemon will be in the game. They created a text file and with the thoughts of what it would be. They then worked with the artists and designers to come up with the designs that would fit the concept. So from the beginning, Scorbunny, Grookey, and Sobble were designed to be these games' first partner Pokemon. Next question. How do you define the individual character of each Pokemon? The new first partner Pokemon, for example, seem to have pretty defined personalities. Answer to that. One thing that sets Pokemon apart from one another, from one other character, brands is that they don't set out to design the Pokemon to be characters themselves. Instead, they're supposed to be living creatures that are believable as existing in their own environment. Like Wooloo, for example, you can picture that living on its own in the wild like an animal would. But it is a little bit different for the first partner Pokemon. They try to infuse them with a fixed personality. For example, Sobble is kind of a crybaby Pokemon, while others might be more active and excitable. In general, they're designed to be believable living creatures, but they try to create more fixed personalities for the first partner Pokemon. For the first partner Pokemon in particular, those are the first Pokemon that the player is going to choose, so having them convey a straightforward personality is important. To make it a lot easier to choose, maybe people who are sad can choose Sobble. So, next question. Now you mentioned Wooloo, which is recently revealed Pokemon that seems to have become extremely popular with fans. Are you ever surprised? Not really. I don't know. I haven't heard that one, fam. Are you ever surprised by which Pokemon the public seems to latch onto? When they were developing new Pokemon, Wooloo was just another Pokemon that was there in the mix. I always thought it was cute, but it definitely caught me by surprise just how popular it became and how much the fans embraced it. Yeah, I haven't heard that one yet. Next one, developing a new Pokemon game. First question. What did you learn about Nintendo Switch development during the Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee that you used during the development of Shield and Sword? Well, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee were our first full game projects that were in development for the Nintendo Switch, and it was almost sort of a research project for us to learn to develop on that system. They did learn that they did learn a lot that we were able to use from. From a programming perspective, they were able to use a very similar code based on what they were working on Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. Without having made those games, they probably wouldn't have been able to deliver Shield and Sword at this time. There were different teams working on those different games, but they were able to use a lot of what they learned. Next question. What elements do you feel are essential to a core Pokemon RPG? Pokeballs! Next up, that's a little bit broad, but let me think of something. One of the things I always put on a lot of focus is feeling the growing alongside of your Pokemon throughout the adventure. I think that's a pretty core to the series. One of the things about Pokemon in general is that the wild Pokemon start out as they're sort of like enemies, but you can catch them, and then they become your friends. So you want to make sure that Pokemon never come across as too evil. They're not just bad guys, they can also be your friend. Having that kind of relationship, I think, is the key to the series. And then, sort of inverse to that, what traditional elements do you feel can be given a new spin in these core RPGs? One example is how you encounter wild Pokemon. It was always random encounters, and they did a lot of experimentation on ways that they could change that up a bit. Then they tried encountering Pokemon that you see walking around in the field. Then in Pokemon Sword and Shield, we landed on this idea of a hybrid system. A lot can change. Every new game, they're thinking of of the era in which the games are going to be released and who the target audience is. So depending on that kind and who they're trying to make the games appealing for, things can change from time to time. It can be even something as small as being able to use the right stick to freely move the camera in a wild area. That was something that hasn't been able to do in a Pokemon game before. There are a lot of debate internally about if we should let people control the camera. We tried it out and decided that it was something that they wanted to include in the game. That's an example of meeting the needs of the time. It's just become so normal now for games to allow you to control the camera. Players are used to that, so we felt it would work well here. Does Gamefreak consider Pokemon Sword and Shield to be more a portable experience or more of a console game that you would on TV? It's kind of hard to say. They really view it as both. For example, Dynamax Pokemon look a lot impressive on the big screen, so maybe doing raid battles is something you would want to experience on a TV. But at the same time, you can take it anywhere you go and enjoy your adventure anywhere. It really becomes down to the player's playstyle. That's kind of what I love about the Switch. Dynamax Pokemon and Max Raid Battles. First question. Speaking of Dynamax Pokemon, what was the inspiration behind this new feature? One of the big reasons for us wanting to implement Dynamax Pokemon was the Nintendo Switch has a high resolution and you can play it on the big TVs, and we were able to better express the difference in size of Pokemon before on the smaller screen. Handheld only systems, there just weren't enough pixels to really convey that well in a lot of situations. It was something that they wanted to challenge themselves to do for the first time. How do you feel Dynamax offer differs from Mega Evolution or Z moves? It's kind of a combination, if you ask me. They wanted to try to take on that power up gameplay that they had with Mega Evolution and Z moves. Holy shit! Who's been correct since the start? Kind of combined the two of those in a way that Dynamax your Pokemon are powering up and growing much stronger, but also their moves change and become a lot stronger as well. Who's been right, fam? Of course, they also want to make it more strategic when the player is choosing exactly when to Dynamax, which is why they limited the power to just 3 turns. When introducing a new element to Pokemon battles such as Dynamaxing, how do you maintain a balance to keep the battles interesting? That's a tough question, but one of the goals that they tried to set out with was making it so that the Pokemon could be viable in battle. Virtually all the Pokemon can Dynamax in the game. Even Pokemon that may not have had the chance to be in the spotlight until now will have a chance to use that ability. That was one of the main things that they considered from the balancing perspective. Will you be able to use Dynamax Pokemon in PvP battles? Yes, you will. What was the inspiration behind Max Raid battles? It started with the idea of having these giant Pokemon with the Dynamax feature, and then we saw them in action in the game, and we thought it would be a lot of fun if you could team up with your friends to take on these giant Pokemon like a big, challenging boss. The Nintendo Switch gives them a lot in terms of performance, so they were able to have 4 players and their Pokemon in this huge Pokemon all over the screen at once. We played around with it, and it seemed like a cool feature. Another one of the goals for it was to opportunity to players to engage in multiplayer battles who like battling, but might be too intimidated to get into PvP battles. So having this option where you can invite your friends to come join in the cooperative battle is something that they wanted to do. So can max raid battles be completed by yourself, or are they designed solely for multiplayer? Even if you don't have anyone else to play with, you can challenge a max raid battle on your own. If you do this, the other player slots, which will normally be filled by human players, will be filled by support trainers. These are computer-controlled NPC players who, yes, cool, I don't have friends. Yeets. Exploring the wild area. Tell us about the wild area. How does it differ from traditional routes in previous Pokemon RPGs? Our thinking behind the wild area and how it's different from the typical routes is that they wanted to create a place where it can be interesting to come back every day and see what has changed. Something that would feel different from each time you play. We needed a really wide open space that we could do for that. We also wanted to have some place that would support other players that you could play with. A big place that provides a sense of adventure where you can encounter other people, a place that has a sense of discovery. Pokemon.com says, tying into the wild area, they wanted to get your thoughts on the evolution of wild Pokemon encounters throughout the series. Of course, they use to randomly encounter Pokemon in tall grass, and eventually there would be an exclamation point, and a wild Pokemon would charge you. And now you can sometimes see the Pokemon wandering around the screen. What place do each of these Pokemon methods of encountering wild Pokemon have in the world of Pokemon? These different methods represent two different ways of playing, really. With the Pokemon roaming around in the field, you can see the Pokemon all behaving a bit differently. It feels like a living environment with all the Pokemon around you, and you can see which Pokemon are out there, and you can choose if you want to go catch them. You have a goal in mind when you encounter these Pokemon. You want to catch that specific one. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of enjoyment to be had in not knowing what you're going to get. It's a kind of a different thought process when you're engaging with both systems. I want to have both in Pokemon Sword and Shield preserve the discovery of going into a random encounter. The music of the Galar region. Who is composing the music for the Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield? The primary composer is Mr. Go Ichonose and Miss Minako Adachi. Pokemon.com. How do the music themes in the game differ from the Galar region reflect the Galar region setting? There are definitely a lot of things that they challenge themselves to do with the music this time around. Although I didn't compose any of the music, I was very involved with the direction of the music and what I wanted to convey with it. With the UK being the inspiration for the Gala region, they wanted to be inspired by the enjoyment of the UK rock music, so I wanted to bring the sense of that to the soundtrack. Also, with the wild area specifically, most of the typical Pokemon route music has been fairly short tunes that are about a minute or so that would loop. But since you're going to be in the wild area for such a long amount of time, I wanted to have longer songs filled with ups and downs, so there's some of that in the game. So that's pretty cool. Very, very nice little feedback from the people that are creating Pokemon Sword and Shield. Nice little intervention with those two and Pokemon.com. So yeah, it's a pretty cool interview. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Leave a thumbs up on the video, share the video if you're on social media, subscribe if you're new around here, and peace out, team.